am. I've been kind of just solo doing my own thing. Uh, talk to a lot of people. Never. I just don't really have a home. As far as the network goes. But welcome everyone. It is your boy Tony the Savant. Welcome to episode 20 of the show. I have a special guest here, Mr. Rudy Reyes. How you doing there, Mr. Rudy?
I'm doing good. How are you? Thanks for having me on, Tony. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Doing very well here. I like to start my shows off, Mr. Woody, with letting the people know where they can find you. Some of your plugs. Can you let them know?
Oh, certainly. You can find me at the rudedogshow.com. I'm gaining followers, and the momentum keeps swinging my direction on X at Rude Dog Reyes there. You can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Threads, if that's even a thing anymore. And of course, Instagram is kind of something I keep building towards. Of course, my YouTube channel on the at the Rude Dog Show on YouTube.
Yes, sir. I like that. Yeah, I believe I follow you on Instagram for sure. I found you through Coach Couch. I know he a couch coach. Chris, I
Yeah.
got mixed up. So yeah, I know you stay busy, very busy, man.
Yeah, very busy. At times, days don't look like I think they should, and then when they do, it all turns out right at the end of the day.
Amen.
So far, so good.
Amen. I love that, Mr. Rudy. Well, let's get right into it. I kind of wanted to get to know you a little bit on the show, and as far as you being a legend in the game, as far as where I'm at, Mr. Rudy, you're a legend. Been working very hard for a long time. May I ask you, how did you get started in the sports journalist, sports reporter world?
Um, wow, that's actually a really good question. I started at the age of 40, so don't let anybody tell you can't do it starting at the age of 40 because it's certainly possible to do. I turned my fandom and kind of navigated away from that because I felt as though I'm just way too objective to look through fan colored glasses, of course, albeit black and gold. And of course, my team are the Steelers. But with that, just understanding that there's so much more to the game, I really wanted to dive into it and just felt so compelled to getting players on my show, interviewing them, talking to them, finding out the adversities and challenges they face along the way to get them to where I think that they could have actually gone to. Some have been drafted, and other guys had not been drafted. I've had the pleasure of covering Super Bowls, media weeks, the ESPY Awards, the Humanitarian Awards, Final Four, Elite Eight, Sweet 16. I've just continued to drive and push. I've been to a couple training camps as well, Cowboys recently this past season, as well as the Steelers back in 2004. So it's been a journey, and it's ongoing. And for those that don't want to give up, don't. For those that do, this is not for you. It's not for the faint-hearted. So you
Yeah.
have to keep plugging, regardless of, again, the adversities these players face, as you know, Tony, are the same adversities that we face as well. They may not be as expensive,
Mhm.
or they may wear Gucci's and we wear Levi's or Vans, but
Mhm.
the concepts are the same.
Yes, sir. And I love that. I take that responsibility very serious as a sports journalist, Mr. Rudy. And indeed, I grew up as an athlete. So, just playing high school sports, the level of sacrifice and the diets and all that stuff, I try to approach my journalistic career with that in mind, that these are real people with real stories, real lives. And we don't get to see everything they're privy to. We get to see them on the big stages, big lights, but behind the scenes, I'm sure they got to argue, gotta have a debate with their wife and kids running around, all that good stuff as well.
Oh, sure, absolutely. There's so much to unravel. They're all onions. You just have to peel them back a layer at a time, and you get to know who they are just based on conversation. Again, they are no different from you or I. It's really about who they are, what they do, and of course, people that are famous really like to talk about themselves. Not
Yeah.
that they're stuck on themselves or egotistical or anything of that nature. They just
Mhm.
enjoy talking about their story and their journey, as well as they should,
Mhm.
especially when they reach the pinnacles of greatness in whatever sport they happen to partake in. So it's
Yes.
really critical to, and people think, you know what, I'm a talk machine. I can talk, talk, talk. Well, that's not the art. The art is listening.
Amen. Yes,
And
sir.
we don't listen enough, and we should. We do a lot more listening and a lot less talking. We get a lot more. and those sound bites just keep rolling in with the right questions.
Yeah, that's so true, Mr. Rudy. That's so true. Learning a lot right now, just listening, listening to you. Well, I wanted to ask you as well, Mr. Rudy, with so many, uh, epic events and such a story path that you had in your career path. Was there an event? I know you're a Steelers man and you covered the Steelers, but was there any event that you would say was your absolute favorite or uh, the one that you enjoy covering the most?
Mm, I would say the NFL is what I enjoy covering the most.
Hmm.
I've had some relative success in understanding, sports organizations, people within the NFL framework. But I I really like basketball. I'm and every year I get into basketball. This year, baseball has really kind of been on the back burner in
Yeah.
regards to the likability aspect of it. And don't get me wrong, there are stories throughout every single team sport or individual sport landscape.
Mm.
But as far as enjoying the covering, that is certainly going to be the NFL, no doubt about it.
I like that. Hey, I like that. And as I'm going along, the NFL is becoming very interesting to cover, especially with all of the shaking and the moving and guys going around. Um, I've been speaking of the Steelers. I was going to start with some basketball, but if you don't mind, Mr. Rudy, I want to, since football is your favorite, I want to ask you a few things. There's been some interesting things going on in Steeler Nation. You all acquiring Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. Do you foresee any QB controversy brewing in that situation, or how do you see that situation panning out, especially with a legendary coach like Mike Tomlin? How
Well,
do you think?
actually that's a really good question because I don't believe they're going to come into training camp with any type of ill-gotten feelings. I think they're both in a very good situation. I know Mike Tomlin certainly does his absolute best in making sure that players understand what their role is, why they're there, and wants the impact on the field, literally, if not figuratively, equivalent to what goes on off of the field. So when it comes to both of these guys being the 1-2 punch for the Steelers in the AFC North, these guys are the quintessential backup and starting quarterback, whoever that might be. And of course, Justin Fields is a guy who's coming in, does not have that much experience, felt the failures in Chicago due to organizational failures and coaching failures. And well, the list goes on and on, which I won't drive into. However, it's a best case scenario situation for Justin Fields coming over to Pittsburgh to play for the Steelers and under coach Mike Tomlin, who knows what it's like to have a Hall of Fame quarterback as a starter as he coached Ben Roethlisberger.
Mhm.
Russell Wilson, slightly different path in regards to where he came from. Of course, Seattle was a famed franchise for him. He had spent the majority of his season there, found a very hot ticket in Denver. Unfortunately, that fire was certainly put out quick, if
Yeah.
not probably the quickest fire of guaranteed monies, which put the Denver Broncos behind the cap. And that is not a good thing,
Mhm.
especially when they're biting for free agency. Not a lot of players wanted to go there. They didn't have the money, and they still don't because they're all choked up with what they handed over to Russell Wilson, short of the keys to the city.
Yeah.
So Russell Wilson, also a great situation for him. He has a chance to revive his career. I think it was dimes on the dollar for the acquisition for Russell Wilson as well as for Justin Fields. This
Mhm.
backup tandem is going to be something to watch for as we get closer, and as training camp certainly is rearing its very beautiful head coming July.
Yes, sir. No, very exciting. I love this time of the year, because that's when the storyline starts starting and gives us some things to talk about very early. Uh, well, moving on from speaking, we've been keeping on the quarterbacks. Kenny Pickett, I was a big fan of his. What was your opinion of him, Mr. Rudy? You're a former quarterback now.
I think he took that a little too personally. So watching Russell Wilson come into the Steelers building, I think he knew that the writing was on the wall, but it wasn't actually written in a way that he understood it and misread what he had what was written on the wall. So there's
Mhm.
certainly questions to be had for Kenny Pickett's maturity or lack thereof in regards to how he handled the situation. Could he have handled it better? Sure. I believe he also feels as though he could have handled it that much better.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it is what it is, and he is where he's at to back up Jalen Hurts. I think that's a very good quarterback backup, situation there in Philadelphia. Of course, staying in the Keystone State certainly helps his cause. I don't believe that the Eagles fell head over heels for him. I thought it was just, he just fell into their lap,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah.
Backup quarterbacks in the NFL are not at a premium. They should be, but they're not. And you see situations throughout the NFL landscape where we were talking about the Broncos earlier, where they have Bo Nix, but
Mm-hmm.
who's backing up Bo Nix? There isn't a whole lot of veteran quarterbacks, and you're not going to get Ryan Fitzpatrick out of retirement to back him up. So
Yeah.
you have to look at this with an honest view and say, well, it's a good place for him to be. Maybe not the ideal situation, but to Philly, it's ideal for them, and I guess that's what matters.
I would agree. I would agree 100% with you there, Mr. Rudy. Well, now that we're getting the football season is brewing, I've been asking my past few guests about the very early Super Bowl predictions. But just have a little fun with it. I want to ask you first: do you see Kansas City three-peating? I mean, the elusive three-peat. We've seen a few teams get the opportunity, not in the NFL so much, because it's so difficult to get one, let alone two. But do you foresee Mr. Mahomes and company going on the magic carpet ride and completing it?
Well, we look at what Kansas City had done last season. They were 22.4 yards average, which landed them in the lower tier of the NFL as far as wide receiver completion. So
Mm-hmm.
I look at the Kansas City Chiefs, think to myself, okay, it's good they have Xavier Worthy. They drafted him, the fastest guy at the combine. Of course, that takes precedence over Cheetah, who's now with the Miami Dolphins. But
Mm-hmm.
prior to that, with the aforementioned Kansas City Chiefs. So they do have more speed. They acquired Brown in the offseason coming over from Tennessee in free agency. I'll be honest with you. This is going to be hard because when you look at Travis Kelce, he's aging fast. Yeah, he re-signed another deal for I believe it was 2 years, but that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't necessarily mean he's going to play every single down. Doesn't mean he won't. It just means that he's getting older and he recognizes that the wear and tear on him could be unforeseeable in regards to accidents, injuries, and recovery time, and what that looks like when you get a little bit older, because it takes a long time for a bone to heal or a tear to reheal itself, and so on.
Yeah.
Kansas City certainly is a favorite in the AFC overall. I don't know about going back to the Super Bowl. I can only say this, that when you look at Patrick Mahomes with Xavier Worthy, with Brown, with Kelsey, maybe Rasheed Rice, maybe depending on his legal situation and what that looks like after he was arrested and detained, and there's still NFL policy violations that he basically ran to the ground. So certainly a lot to discover and find out what this Chiefs team looks like during the regular season. I don't know that they run it back for a third time, because teams, as you know, progressively throughout the NFL landscape understand that he he poses a challenge, Patrick Mahomes, every time he touches the field.
Yeah.
But when you start to understand the tape and understand the way that he plays,
Mm-hmm.
it's certainly something to look out for, because you could see the same style, and that's where defenses learn from. So
Yeah.
we'll see what this looks like. It's a little too early to suggest the Chiefs are going to go back to back to back. Not that it hasn't been done. New England Patriots, the Steelers, aforementioned, and just a couple of other. The Dallas Cowboys did that. So I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there's certainly some magic there in Kansas City still. However, teams get wiser every year, and when that happens, watch out, because that could spell doom for the Kansas City Chiefs and their run to a three-peat.
Man, I agree. And the more tape they seem to get on you, my dad, he has a saying: the NFL stands for not for long. So if you're good now, expect in a couple games you won't see the same kind of productivity. But me, I am a Green Bay Packers fan, Mr. Rudy. I know that you're a Steelers man. I have put all my proverbial money on my Green Bay Packers to make a run this season. Uh, Again, I want to get your super early Super Bowl predictions. Who do you see coming out of the NFC as well as the AFC? I know you got a bias for your Steelers, of course.
Well, that's going to be tough, because there's so many teams that decided to upgrade in the NFC. Michael Penix goes to the Commanders,
Yeah.
unbeknownst. to their current quarterback.
Yeah.
Drafted, that's certainly questions for them moving forward.
Yeah.
There's a big upgrade. It was quarterback central this year. Let's just
Yeah.
call it what it is. A lot of teams upgraded.
Yeah.
It's hard. Green Bay did some upgrades as well.
Hmm.
Jordan Love is your starter. There's no doubt about it. He showed his magic toward the end of the season, talking about your Packers.
Yeah.
Um, I the offensive line really gelled as the season went on.
Hmm.
And the last thing they should do is go back to David Bakhtiari. I'm just throwing that out there
Yeah.
because you don't know what you're going to get from him. He's been injured, stayed injured for the majority of the season. The guy just can't stay healthy, and he's much older. So you have to look at that and say, man, is he in my top 5? Do I want to bring this guy back? And if so, how much money am I going to waste if he gets injured?
Yeah.
How much sideline time is he going to see? Right,
Exactly.
versus being a starter on the field. So
Hmm.
it, it is way too early, way too early to crown a champion. Of course, in the AFC, in the AFC North specifically, Lamar Jackson was on a great run. He said to bet on himself during contract conversations and what that contract looked like. Most of it was guaranteed, which is great for teams, great for the Ravens because they paid all that money up front, which does not hit the cap. So
Yeah.
this is going to be interesting. This is going to be a telltale season for Lamar Jackson moving forward to see if that bag that he acquired was going to pay off literally, and
Yeah.
if the dividends will be shown to the Ravens in a postseason run. They lost McQueen to the Steelers, which is actually a good thing for Pittsburgh because Mike Tomlin actually wanted to draft him, but did not get the opportunity because Baltimore moved up to grab him.
Yeah.
However, this is going to be tough. Cincinnati Bengals did not fare very well, especially against Pittsburgh last year.
Hmm.
You've seen, again, another injury-riddled season. They had early momentum, in weeks 5 through 8. And then you go maybe 10, maybe 12, but then they just fell off the wagon somewhere along the lines. And those crucial losses within your conference are going to affect you in the long term. And they just got jumped by Pittsburgh. Of course, the Steelers weren't ready for the Buffalo Bills in postseason play
Yeah.
because of the lackluster quarterback play between Mason Rudolph, named the starter. But since that solution's been answered, it's certainly going to make it look really, really good on paper. However, when you look at the Browns, they did some upgrades. Whether or not they stick with Joe Flacco moving forward, I don't know. A lot of key questionable throws that he had made during the postseason play, but that's Joe Flacco. I mean, you already know what you're going to get from Joe Flacco, just
Yeah.
like Kirk Cousins. I
Yeah.
think because Joe's already been there, done. He's already won a Super Bowl ring, so he really doesn't have to prove that he's a winner because he knows that he is. But as you get older, just like Tom Brady can attest to, you got to know when to say win.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think that ship has sailed for Kirk Cousins, to be honest, because we know what we're getting from Kirk Cousins too. So too many questions and not enough answers for a lot of these quarterbacks that are going into season, much less training camp. And it would not surprise me to see Kirk Cousins not be that named starter over Michael Penix Jr. Just
Oh
saying.
yeah. Oh yeah, I would be shocked as well, especially for 180 red coins. It's a lot of money to be given to somebody just to be the backup. I mean, it's very interesting you bring. I thought that was a very perplexing move as well. Hopefully, I don't know. Maybe they have some plan in place with Michael Penix and watch Kirk and eventually take over the reins.
Maybe in a year's time, perhaps, because he needs to learn the NFL speed. And some players don't get acclimated to that aspect of, what, maybe I can acclimate to the regular season during an NFL season, not an NCAA season. So it's going to be difficult. It's going to be different. But I think, look, Michael Penix is no dummy. He has one of the highest IQs, the highest accuracy rates in NCAA football history. It would not surprise me whatsoever for him to adapt quickly and get in there earlier over someone like Kirk Cousins, who we know we're going to get something for, and essentially maybe not a whole lot more than what we think that we've seen. And of course, it's a far cry when we see him. Oh, you like that, huh? Well, I like it for now, but I don't know if I'm going to like that later. So we'll see. We'll see what that holds.
It's amazing. A sound bite can get you $100 million contract these days.
Yeah. Well, you know what?
Multiple.
He's a really good salesman. I mean, he
Yeah.
is a good salesman. He knows how to get his bags. He did it in Minnesota, and
Yeah.
now he's got a chance to do it again. So, we'll see. We will see. I am not surprised if you see Michael Penix take snaps moving forward after week 6.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that. I can definitely see that. Well, Mr. Wood, I wanted to ask you, kind of segue over into our next segment. I know that you're a Lakers man, and we're speaking about we can say Kirk is almost legendary, a veteran, definitely. But you all have a guy on your list. Well, I don't know now. He just announced that he'll be a free agent, LeBron James. I asked you yesterday, how did you feel about him being on your Lakers? You gave me a 50-50, but if you can just expand on that, Mr. Rudy, what is your opinion of the state of the Lakers now, with or without LeBron James?
That's going to be a very interesting tale of the tape because I like LeBron to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's great when you win and people forget about all the losses when you win.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, there's too much crying to referees. There's too much bawling to referees. And to LeBron's credit, he has done everything that he was asked to do. He helped lead this team, but there's no other LeBron James on the court than just him. So
Mm-hmm.
you can't ask him to more himself and to turn every power position player when you have guys that just did not show up in certain games throughout the regular season and even
Yeah.
in postseason play. LeBron James, he's going to go down as one of the best ever. There's no doubt about it in my mind. Kobe Bryant is still like the GOAT, but Michael Jordan is the ultimate GOAT.
Yeah.
Uh, so I don't know. I like the I don't I'm not a fan of the state of the Lakers right about now in regards to offseason moves, what that looks like, who they're going to keep, who they're not going to keep, who they're going to trade. There's way too many questions right now for the Lakers. And of course, no one can do anything. Why? Because the Eastern Conference Finals and the Western Conference Finals are currently taking place. So until basketball's over in totality and the season ends, you're not going to see anything whatsoever. Now, with his son coming into view, right?
Yeah.
Into the NBA draft, I'm not convinced. I haven't seen enough from Bronny. Of course, he's named after his dad, LeBron, but I
Yeah.
haven't seen enough from Bronny to convince me that he is going to be that generational talent. His body of work is not there yet. He went to USC, and yes, he had some good games, but there was nothing really that kind of stood out about
Yeah.
his play style, his mentality. Well, of course, the tale will be whether or not he can compete at the highest level in the NBA, and albeit an opportunity to maybe play with his dad. I heard and read that the Suns are trying to position themselves to have that conversation with LeBron James once free agency begins.
Mm-hmm.
But with that, if they can get a 1-2 punch with Bronny, with Devin Booker, maybe Kevin Durant if he stays around,
Mm-hmm.
this is this could be the team to beat. I'm not going to talk about the three towers and have this conversation about the biggest guys are going to be the biggest winners. That's
Yeah.
nonsense. I mean, money helps win championships. Ask the LA Dodgers; they know all about that, another LA
Yeah.
team.
Yeah.
But this is not baseball. This is basketball, and this is extremely hard and difficult, long tenured season. I take nothing away from baseball, of course, but when you look at the Lakers and the amount of talent they do have, the talent they did have, and the talent they could acquire, perhaps G League draft night, they really need to dig deep. Jeannie Buss really has to look at the organization from the outside looking in and saying, if I was a GM, what would I do? Um,
Mhm.
they need to fire their GM. Honestly,
Mhm.
I just don't. I don't know how he continues to have a job. And Rob Pelinka, I just have a very hard time understanding where Rob Pelinka's mind is in regards to some of those acquisitions during the regular season, and grabbing a guy off the street who's sitting on the couch eating a bag of Lay's. I mean, I don't know. I have a hard time believing that the Lakers are going to find their way into postseason play without a major overhaul. And on top of that, who's going to be their head coach? Is it JJ Redick? Really, a guy who hasn't had any coaching experience whatsoever? But
Yeah.
two, in all due respect to JJ Redick, what he does have is knowledge, and
Yeah.
his knowledge is deep. He's a high IQ guy, high energy guy. He certainly knows how to get the team to rah-rah behind
Mhm.
him, but it's going to take more than a rah-rah coach to get this team back into the winning ways to actually call them Lake Show, because right now they're called the Lake No, because they're not going to get past.
And I'm so happy to hear from you, Mr. Rudy, from somebody that's inside of Laker Nation. Because there's a lot of casual fans outside, the bandwagon guys that's just really LeBron James fans, but they act as they're Laker fans. They just are concerned with what LeBron does next and have really no concern as far as the state of the team. But I am in lockstep with you as far as Jeannie Buss. Now, I know she wears the last name of the great Buss, Father Buss, Showtime Lakers, and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think she is the one for the job. I would like to see, and I don't know if you would agree with me on that. I do agree with you with Rob Pelinka. I think he has that seat because of Kobe Bryant. Just having some seniority, being Kobe Bryant's agent all those years. But I think Jeannie Buss has to go as well. Would you agree with that, Mr. Rude?
I'm gonna probably say no this time around, and here's why: because she has helped build championship caliber teams. She built that championship and what they called the COVID championship, right? Where they pumped in the noise and everyone was isolated. Talk about an ISO basketball game, right? Because there was nobody there but coaches and players and pumping in the noise. She has probably maybe a couple of years left in regards to righting the ship, because her dad is turning over in the grave right now, wondering what the heck are you doing to my Lakers?
Yeah.
So that's certainly a page she needs to take from her dad's playbook, her late father's playbook, and say, well, you did it this way. Maybe I can approach it in the same way. Now, with that being said, you still have the opposite being true, that was then, this is now. The NBA has evolved and changed and manifested into what we're looking at, especially tonight with the Mavericks. Mavericks? Really?
Right.
Taking
Yeah.
on the Timberwolves? The Timberwolves haven't been there in over 30 years. So,
Yeah.
there's a lot of questions to be had for Jeannie Buss, and what does offseason look like for her? What decisions will she make? And I give her 2 more years and to find out exactly who is going to take over for her, if there is anyone at all, because you're handing the keys of the franchise to someone else,
Yeah.
not named Buss.
Yeah. And that'd be a totally new era in Laker Nation. After you have the Buss family involved, I'm sure she'll be involved in some way if she handed over some ownership. But speaking of, Mr. I was just going to segue into the Western Conference Finals. I was watching the Mavericks and the Timberwolves game right now. What is your opinion? I'm loving, me personally, I just should throw this out there. I'm loving the NBA Conference Finals. I'm loving all of these young guys getting some attention. We're going to get over to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think it's kind of foregone conclusion what's going on over on that side of the ball. But this Western Conference Finals, Mr. Rudy, how do you feel about these two, again, unlikely teams in the mix now for a championship?
It's crazy because we didn't even think about either one of these teams being in this exact position where they're at right now, and that is the biggest ticket to punch to get to the finals. And it's interesting that both of these teams happen to be here when neither one of them were ever thought of actually being here. Now, of course, Mavericks have been here a lot sooner than the Timberwolves. However, the Timberwolves are in almost a win situation, down 2-0. And they're in Dallas playing at American Airlines Arena tonight. And I've been in that stadium, or that arena rather, and it is not player friendly for opposing teams. So certainly a lot to be said for the Mavericks. There are things that I do enjoy it, but there are things that I don't enjoy about it. First of all, I don't like crybaby players. Luka Doncic reminds me of that crybaby player.
Yes.
He does some amazing things. There's no doubt about it. He has the athleticism, the IQ, the ferocity, the way that he plays, how he plays it. And he just has skills to the game that nobody else has. However, with that being said, because we're talking NBA years and maybe dog years, I think that the NBA years for Luka are ahead of him and not behind him, meaning that he needs to mature a lot faster and not be such a crybaby and finger pointing in regards to fouls that don't go his way. Because the more focused and concentrated you are on getting those calls, you miss the plays up court.
Exactly.
When you're needed in transition, right, on the opposite end. So That's what I don't like. What I do like about it is that these teams have combined to anywhere between 3 points to a 1 point win or lose situation. And
Yeah.
again, the Timberwolves just need to play that much smarter. Gobert went out early, didn't really see a whole lot from him.
Mm-hmm.
Too many fouls, no game fluency. Anthony Edwards is a guy that I'd like for him to move on because he's just a consummate pros pro. I mean, he just does it night in and night out without fail.
Yeah.
Cat, Karl Anthony Towns, not really a guy I look forward to watching because he's lackadaisical and he makes very indecisive passes, and the timing of those passes just seem to be off, and he's not playing with the same energy and enthusiasm you would expect to see him play. Since he had done it in the regular season, where is he at in postseason? He's almost disappeared.
Yeah, yeah. He's had a couple shots to his credit because he calls himself the greatest big man shooter. So I've seen him. Well,
The Joker has that title from Denver.
I think Joker, you can even throw Dirk Nowitzki. Go back a couple years. Dirk used to hit a big shot, but Dirk was more of a the straightaway three. He wasn't really a corner three guy or a shoulder three guy. You give him that walk into that straightaway three. I think he's in the mix. But Cat, yeah, to your credit, everyone keeps calling him the number 2, but he doesn't really serve up to that number 2. I like the kid Jaden McDaniels. He's good for a 20-point night. But he's not a solidified number 2 as well.
Right.
I think
and that's where all the rotation comes into play. That's when you check your depth. When you look at the other team and you look at the bench production, because they all get those numbers at the half on a regular basis. You look at production, think to yourself, man, if you're not producing, I got to go to my bench. Sorry, but it is what it is. We're trying to win the game. I'm not trying to sit here and play favorites so that way I can have you on my team next. If you don't play and you don't play well, you may not even be here anyway. So, I look at this as kind of a win or go home scenario in a very hostile environment at American Airlines Arena for the Timberwolves.
Oh, yeah. And you said a mouthful, Ms. Rudy. As far as being in that arena, I lived in Texas for 13 years and went to many of Mavs games. And, man, that when they're rocking, that place is rocking. They really go out for those Mavericks. But lovely, I love that. As far as the Eastern Conference, Mr. Rudy, I think the Boston Celtics, maybe if we had this conversation a week ago, it would have been a little bit more suspenseful. But the Boston Celtics have steamrolled the Pacers. Not only that, of course, they lost their star point guard. I think his status for Game 4 is still up in the air, but of course, he wasn't there for Game 3. Do you think the Celtics are going to is this their year, Mr. Rudy? Because they've been in the mix a few years as well.
Well, I think they'll close out. I really think that they will just close it out. They smell blood. They really smell the blood in the water like a shark. And when that happens, it's over. And there is no coming back from that. You cannot outswim a shark. And that's something that the Pacers are really trying to do. They missed Tyrese Halliburton. There's no doubt about it. Yes, they know how to play without him. They played without him during the regular season. It's not a big surprise, not a big shocker that they found ways to win. The problem is that the Celtics have too much, too early, too often from Jaylen Brown, Drew Holiday, Jason Tatum, even though he disappeared slightly in Game 2. He made up for it in Game 3. And then you have Pritchard. You have your mainstay guys, but you can go to your bench. Now, look, for all intents and purposes, the bench of the Celtics didn't really produce a whole lot. They produced more minutes than they did points. However, the opposite is true for Indiana. The problem is that Rick Carlisle's not rotating them in as I suspect that he should have during Game 3 in that critical teeter-totter kind of game where you can keep the Celtics at bay. Now, don't forget, for those that have no idea what that means in totality, Pacers, up until that loss, were winners at home. They had not lost a game all season long at home. It shows the difference between being able to play on the road and playing at home. Playing at home is your favorite. Playing away is not your favorite, and that's when you have to show up even bigger than when you do play at home. We're watching the game tonight between the Mavericks and the Timberwolves. Same thing is true there. Both of those teams play very good at home. Mavericks actually play a little bit better away than they do at home. However, and that's just during the regular season. However, I like where the Celtics are going, and I think they're going to close this out.
Yes, sir. As far as moving on to that finals, do you think that the Celtics can, no matter if the Mavericks or the Timberwolves get there, do you think the Celtics can finally get over the hump? This is their sixth conference finals in 8 years. Of course, they ran against, I've been telling a few of my peers, they ran against a legendary Steph Curry in 2022. For all intents and purposes, I don't think any team in the East could have beat that Steph Curry as far as how motivated he was. But, these young Celtics, they're still young, still hungry, still in their primes. Do you think they can seal the deal as far as getting a championship back to Beantown?
That's going to really be tough. I know they want to raise that 18, and I get it. I understand it. The Lakers had already done that, been there, done that.
Yeah.
But from an Eastern Conference standpoint, they have the easiest path to get there, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Again, they're going to close out against the Pacers. And to be honest with you, I think their best bet is to go up against the Mavericks, to be perfectly honest with you, because they give them a more formidable challenge. However, the Celtics have more stars and they have more firepower, and they hit from a higher percentage three. They know how to get inside of the paint. They know how to shoot from the perimeter. They know how to pass. As long as they stay on their A game from tip off, I think they'll end up raising that 18, and it could very well be in Boston.
Yeah, I think so too. Do you think, well, we're just projecting as far as the Mavs, they're up 8 right now, but you think that if the Mavs make it, could Luka Magic and old wise Kyrie pull it off? I mean, we just projected. I don't want to count the Timberwolves out, Mr.
No, I don't either. I would like to see Minnesota actually pull this win out, because it makes, from a fan's perspective, it makes for an absolutely fantastic finish to the series, because now they've climbed back into it. Nobody wants a blowout. Just like you watch an NFL game, you don't want a blowout. I mean, it's boring, it's bland. You're wandering around, eating your bonbons and chips or whatever, and you're wondering, man, is this thing ever going to end? It's like 42-21, or an NBA, 101. It just starts the fourth quarter, and the other team's like 67. I mean, nobody wants a blowout. You want a very competitive matchup, a very competitive game. And I look at this and say, well, I want it competitive, but I don't know that the Mavs will be able to pull it out as easy as they think they can. But I think that the Mavs will probably end up taking it tonight and would put Minnesota's backs against the wall in a must-win 3 games, a skid that they really need to attach to their resume in order to be that team to beat and to take this to Game 7. That's what I want. The reality is that I think the Mavs are just too good, and the Minnesota Timberwolves just really don't have as many answers as early as and often as they are on the court.
Yeah. That Timberwolves defense is always very, rowdy, but their offense comes and goes. I think I've read a stat that they're in the first half, they're like the 11th best offense, and in the second half, they're the first best. But that's only incumbent on Anthony Edwards shooting like 45% from the field. Just some weird stat like that where that offense cannot be trusted.
Sure.
But yeah, I agree with you on that one, Mr. Rudy. Well, I think that's all I really have for you, Mr. Rudy. I thank you. I tried to get it down in a timely manner. Did we do good? Do we still got some time on the shot clock?
I think we're close.
Okay.
We're close. Right. In regards to those who maybe have thought about becoming a sports broadcaster, we can talk about that for a minute. I think that that's a pretty key, a key element, right? Is a mindset, the determination, the desire to, again, learn, and keep learning, attend those events, interview those players, understand where they're coming from, who they are. And if you can encapsulate that into knowledge, that would help you move forward into whatever part of your career you want to go to, whether it's play-by-play, whether it's color announcing, whether you just want to be the TV anchor, or you want to be the sports reporter. There's so much that you can do as an individual just by listening, educating yourself, and just being patient, but never giving up and not stopping and not allowing others to dictate your future for you.
Amen. I love that, Mr. Rudy. Well, if you don't mind, we're going to give a little time for us to talk behind the scenes, and just wanted to get a little bit more knowledge from you, Mr. Rudy. If you're looking for any proteges, pupils, I am in the market, and I would appreciate that. But as far as the show goes, I do want to do any of your last plugs, anything that you got coming up that you want the people to know about.
Well, you guys can check me out on ksby.com. That's Cat Sally Berry Yellow.com. So KSBY. I basically report the news on the Central Coast here in California. You can obviously go to the RudDogShow.com and look at nearly 10 years worth of work of time in the field, from interviews, conversations, photos, players. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. Again, going back to what I was saying earlier, you really, as an individual, if your heart and passion is in this, you just can't stop, and don't take no for an answer. Just keep going. But I would probably stress networking as much as possible with people within the industry. And maybe someone will give you a shot and give you a break. It has happened. Didn't happen to me, but it could happen to anybody else and anyone who's watching. So, take a look at my journey. Go to the RudDogShow.com. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything at all that you feel that you want to ask me, feel free to shoot me an email at the RudDogShow@hotmail.com. That's the RudDogShow@hotmail.com.
Yes.
So, if you need anything at all, feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to answer when time permits. And of course, everybody have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. My day of work starts tomorrow. So I appreciate your time, Tony. I thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure. And keep plugging, keep pushing, and don't take no for an answer.
Man, Mr. Rudy, I certainly would not. And you do the same. You keep trailblazing. You got guys like me following in those footsteps. But thank you, Mr. Rudy, for coming along. And thank you all, everyone that came through tonight. It is Tony the Savant. Have a good night.
Thanks.